Okay, everybody, welcome to our fourth in the series of webinars exploring zero waste and recycling and composting at schools. We are excited because it looks like we're 1 month away from students coming back for a lot of us. And so we're getting ready to prepare. So the NCRA Schools Committee has prepared a training. And today, let's just talk about what we're going to do. First of all, we have housekeeping. We're recording, so turn off your video if you don't want to be recorded. Mute your audio and put questions in the speaker for the speakers in the chat. We will then open it up after the training for dialogue and discussion where we can all kind of see each other and communicate. And we are recording, so all the presentation slides and everything will be at the NCRA Recycles website. We have a Zero Waste Schools page. So I'm Ruth Abbey. I'm on the NCRA Schools Committee. I did want to shout out to the committee members here, particularly Mallory from Go Green, who has helped put the slideshow together, and then we did a switch at the end and said, well, let's do a mini training of what you would see if you were a custodian in Oakland. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to first of all kind of go over the issues to keep in mind. And then we're going to do a sample custodian training from Oakland Unified. And then we'll open up for dialogue and discussions. And then we have some announcements and next steps to sort of keep stuff moving at the end. So I'm going to go over a few quick things. And then NCRA Schools Committee, just chime in if you have anything to add if I miss anything. So one of the key things to keep in mind that's going to be different depending on your district and your school are material types, right, that are going to be recyclable or compostable. In our training today, you're going to hear about Oakland's, but of course, Oakland's different from Alameda, different from LA, different from San Diego. So keep in mind that material types are very important and they're different district to district. And one big question that we all have is, should you be coordinating with your hauler and processor and recycling everything or composting everything that they possibly can take? Or do you need to take a little bit of care and think about what's going on in your community? Because keep in mind that not only with our custodial training, but also with our student and faculty training, we're training these people about what's recyclable and compostable. And schools sometimes have different services than what folks have at home. So in some cases, we've kind of eliminated some items to make it just more close to what they're doing at home. So that's something to keep in mind. And where they have to be different, just need to be really explicit about, hey, this is what we recycle at school, but you may have different rules at home. So pay attention to the rules. Next item, liners. Liners are different in every school district, possibly in some cases, no liners. You're going to hear about that at Oakland Unified. In some cases, they need compostable liners for their organics, which is what they have at Pleasanton Unified. And then in a lot of communities, a lot of programs, they're able to take clear liners in all of the bins. And so there are strategies for that, whether you use the clear liner and then you dump out the containers, et cetera. So you're going to be hearing about that. But liners is an issue that you have to be aware of when you're training your custodial staff. And then, of course, bins. Colors don't always match the internal containers, although that is changing under SB 1383. There is a future requirement to kind of harmonize outdoor bin colors across all systems, but that's going to take a while. In the meantime, we have specialized containers for cardboard only. We may have blue, gray, and green internal. We may not, depending on our school. So this is just another thing that we have to keep in mind that may be different. And then the last thing I want to talk about is emptying procedures and equipment. Ugh, we have different roles in the schools, and in some schools, the students, as a part of their training, really participate in emptying bins, particularly from the classroom. They may take classroom paper and empty that into a centralized bin. But in other districts, the custodial staff really are responsible for taking care of anything that's discarded. And so it's really important for faculty and students to keep materials in the right bins internally so that the custodial staff have an opportunity to support to support the program by getting things out to the correct bin for service. So schools team, is there anything that I missed in terms of overarching things that are going to be different in different districts that we really got to pay attention to? Now's the time to add that in before we turn it over to Nancy and Amanda. Anybody else have any ideas of things that you just got to keep in mind? It's going to be different. Pay attention. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and ask Amanda to go ahead and share her screen. And now we're going to be doing, a virtual training. Now, Nancy and Amanda, and Nancy has to do this at the end of the month with the custodians at Oakland Unified. So we thought what might be good, rather than just having a discussion of what we would do in a training, is to go ahead and have Nancy and Amanda give a training and just see what that's like. And then we'll have a discussion about it. Things are different, things that are the same, what you should do, and then of course we're gonna have sharing all these slides and all this information. So if you need to invent your own, that will be happy too. And then just a reminder, everybody go ahead and mute. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Amanda, to get going.
Thank you. All right, a little feedback for me. So perhaps we need a few mutes. Thank you. Hi, I'm Amanda Halty. I'm a school sustainability specialist, and I work in Alameda and Contra Costa counties with Nancy Deming, and she is the OUSD sustainability manager with custodial and nutrition services. And this presentation we worked on in collaboration with Waste Management, the hauler for OUSD. And as Ruth said, it hasn't been presented yet, so we welcome any feedback. Although Nancy has done numerous presentations to custodial staff and nutrition staff, this one is new with the additions that we have and back to school differences. So welcome to our custodial overview. And this is part of our Waste Sorting 101 series. Can everybody hear me okay? And awesome.
Hear you great.
Great. So hopefully you had a chance to review the Waste Sorting 101, where we go into the details of how to sort properly. And this is something that can be used throughout the campus for the entire community. And we encourage principals to have teachers share this with all the students. And so the training is universal. And it's not just on the shoulders of certain individuals at school, AKA custodians. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, you can watch that at YouTube, on a YouTube channel, and we'll send that to you. We'll go over state mandates, station setups, contamination overview, school community infrastructure, and support that's available. So what we've been talking about a lot are the state mandates, and AB 341 was established in 2012. So this has been around for a while, and it requires entities like schools that generate solid waste, a certain amount per week, to reuse, recycle, and compost. In other words, keep the good stuff out of the landfill. And then we have AB 826, which is a mandate since 2014. And that requires schools to have organic waste recycling and to, again, divert it from the landfill. And that are what we're most familiar with is probably landscape and pruning waste, but this is where we have the food soil paper waste and any food. So these two mandates have been established for a while. The third and new mandate that was established during the pandemic, AB 827, supports these two previous mandates. And this is the new big one, where wherever a school or any entity is producing these recyclables or compostable waste, they have to have these three containers available, and they need to be visible, clearly labeled, accessible. So especially where food is eaten and there's recyclables, these three containers need to be set up. And our newest, SB 1383, is where we need to educate staff. In the past, we've educated certain groups, but now all must be trained in the district, students and staff. Containers have to have the correct signage for both compostables and recyclables. And it has to be sorted correctly. And the inspection needs to take place. And that's where we need major support. There also is going to be in 2024, we have some time here, but recovery of edible food. And OUSD has already been doing that. There's a strong program. And so surplus food to be donated will be continued as we can going forward. Station setups. So here's where custodians are the first and last to support us as we strive to follow these state mandates. And we have resources. Start up the school year, we want to make sure the right bins and signs are in place for students and staff to use. And so we ask custodians to be on the lookout for these correct setups and fixed setups whenever needed. And don't worry, you don't have to memorize this. We'll have posters to put up in the offices. And in this section, I'll detail bin layout, signage, and liners. So bin setups in the kitchen and outdoor stations, which probably will be where meals are taking place. This, since AB 827, don't worry, you don't have to remember all these numbers, and it's mostly important to remember what needs to be set up. So this requires we have recycling and compost bins where these types of waste are generated. So in the cafeteria and outdoor faculty lounges, you really need to have these three bins in place. The faculty lounge can have smaller bins, and signage can be adjusted, but it's most important to have the signage above the bins so it's easily visible, and when in doubt, people can look at the signs to know how to sort properly. And then we have some examples of hand washing stations where mostly you have paper towels that can be composted, and same with the bathrooms. And then here's a typical setup in a classroom where you have the recycling and landfill. So we have various signage options for OUSD. We have the corrugated boards that come with hardware, and we have instructions on how to install those on the handles of the bins and keep them steady so they don't get bumped and hard to read. We also have stickers, and in bathrooms and again washing stations, these new stickers are paper towel only because typically that's what is in the bathrooms, and that's all you need is to compost those items. So again, we have ordering forms that have been created and can help make assessments around the campus on what's needed to be in compliance with the new state mandates, and you can order what will work best at your schools and your sites. So we also have resources where it's easier for students to sort their food. And again, this can be posted up and shared. So you can refer to this when you're setting up new stations, whether it's outdoors or indoors. This should be helpful. We also have, if food is going to be eaten in the classroom, this is our breakfast after the bell that we've used in the past at OUSD. So sort stations can be set up in the classroom, and there also can be a location in the hallway, again with the 3 bins, for either the student helpers or the custodial staff to take it from the classroom and sort it properly. And these are all, you know, changes due to the pandemic, where we have to be.
I think we might have lost you for a minute, Amanda.
You're not on mute, but the speaker cut out.
No, I can't quite hear you right now.
Oh,
that's good. That's better.
okay.
That's good. That's good. Okay, back to you.
Okay, so I was just saying that, did you catch being flexible during the pandemic? We're not eating in the cafeteria, and we need to be cognizant of, we can still sort in the classroom and set up stations in the hallway. We can still sort outdoors, and so we hope that these handouts will allow us to continue to do that and be compliant with the state mandates. Am I good now? Okay. What slide am I on? All right. So procedures for bin liners. The landfill, this is all connected to our hauler waste management, and they are okay with either black or clear liners for landfill. And that's how you're lining your school bins, and then taking them in the black or clean liners to the hauler's bin. As for recycling, clear liners are best, and you want to change the liners only as necessary. If it's clean, you can reuse those liners. However, the big caveat here is waste management does not want these liners in their bins. So the contents has to be unbagged, loose, and dumped into waste management's bins. And then those empty liners will go into waste management's landfill bin. And as for compost, only clear liners, no black liners allowed. And those clear liners can go into waste management's bins and carts. And I want to jump back because there is a big difference at OUSD and with waste management, where they actually have smart cameras on their trucks. And so they can track the contamination if things are not put in the right place. So that's why this is super important. And Nancy will be going into the nitty-gritties on contamination and how to prevent that. And I just wanted to say, all of this cannot be done without your support. It's teamwork. We really appreciate you. You're our first and last defense to stay in compliance and take care of our world. So going into a little bit on the best practices for these bins, a little bit more. If recycling or compost bins have 10% or more contamination, they have to be put into the landfill bin for the hauler. And this is where we need to start figuring out, how do we help the students and staff? Do we need to give them reminders? How do we alert the principal or a lead if the contamination continues? Perhaps there just needs to be a bin placed, a recycling bin placed next to the landfill bin to help divert that contamination. Let me take a sip of water. But if the contamination continues and the team that you're working with cannot solve the problem, then the supervisor and sustainability manager at OUSD needs to be contacted. We can also communicate with waste management, their recycling coordinators. And now I will pass it on to Nancy, and I will be your slide forwarder. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. We're gonna have to talk offline for you to come to the custodial training for Oakland. Use your support. So as Amanda mentioned, right, and Ruth mentioned, this is a new batch. So, you know, this is a new script. So I'm just reading from the slides. Normally, right, also like with this presentation, ideally it would be about an hour, with the idea that we would be pausing and asking questions, going into some of the details a little bit further, checking the crowd for reactions to go into. And so we're kind of giving you the little mock trial of it. So for contamination and overages. So we're going to run through what these issues are. As a reminder, it is up to the custodial team to not fix the mistakes that are, oh my gosh, my slides just, okay. Give me 1 second. I'm having computer difficulties. It just cleared me. Okay. 1 sec. Oh, the beauty of internet. Okay. So as a reminder, it's not up to the custodial team to fix the mistakes found in the bins, but it is up to the custodians to inspect and then correctly placing those lined materials into the appropriate waste management bins and carts. So this involves checking that the materials have been sorted properly, knowing how to identify contamination, and transferring that material into the appropriate waste management bin. So we're still on the same slide. So contamination can happen 2 ways. Most of the time it is when the wrong materials are placed in the recycle or the compost bin, or when recyclable materials are not sufficiently cleaned. But what about the landfill bin? So we are going to be starting to monitor the landfill bin because it can be contaminated too. So let's look at each sorting stream of compost, recycle, and landfill. Next slide. So it is important to monitor the bins while servicing them. The compost bin on the left is only food and food soiled paper. You're looking good, compost. The bin on the left is not looking so good. It looks contaminated, right? So in the compost, the thing we want to look for is the plastic. No plastic forks or spoons, no plastic wrappers, and no meal items that are still wrapped in plastic. Next slide. So contamination in the waste management bins and carts is the end issue. We want to ensure that the materials are being placed into the correct waste management bins. So anything that is not food or food soiled paper, it's contamination for the waste management bins. Next slide. One of the biggest sources of ongoing compost contamination is food wrapped in plastic. Food is compostable, plastic is not. So the enchiladas in this photo, these are contaminating this bin since they're plastic wrapped. Of course, we want to reduce surplus food in the first place. And so we want to reduce the food waste, right? And then anything that is surplus that we can't save or repurpose, then we want to donate that. There are times when the plastic wrap food still needs to be tossed because it may have spoiled, way past expiration date, that sort of thing. So then, unfortunately, as we work through the reduction and donation, there are times when it still needs to be disposed of. So when this happens, ideally it is removed from the packaging first. And we know that there are times this is not possible to unpackage the materials, so then the items would just have to go into the landfill bin. Next slide. So the recycle bin on the left is only milk cartons and a few plastic trays. You're looking good, recycle. The bin on the right is full of flimsy plastic bags, Ziploc bags, food wrappers, saran wrap. So we see all those things in that bin. We want to remember flimsy plastic are always a landfill item. Next slide, please. One of the main contaminants to the recycle bin are those plastic liners. So this, we do want to take the recyclables and empty them out into the waste management bins where they're loose and unbagged. So our team has pretty much gotten this down on the liners. I'm not going into the waste management recycle bin with this requirement starting for us just this past July. Let's keep up on this great work. Next slide. So spotting contamination in the recycling bin is important, and it is a little bit more complex. So as Amanda mentioned about the 10% contamination allowance, we want to, stay within that 10 or even be down to no contamination is the end goal. But if the recyclables are too dirty, then it's contamination. Or if there's beverage containers with excess liquid, this can spill and make paper wet and unrecyclable. Plastic tubs and trays with food residue, this can make paper greasy and non-recyclable. An example could be a salad in a clear clamshell. If the salad is not finished and to be tossed, the contents should be emptied out to the compost bin. The bit of dressing left on the clamshell is okay, as it would be considered under that 10% contamination. And then paper and cardboard need to be clean and dry to be processed. So wet and dirty recyclables tossed in the blue bin ruin otherwise good paper. An example of this could be a heavily soiled pizza box that should be tossed in the compost bin. Next slide. So the landfill bin mistakes, right? So this is something new that we're going to be looking at for this next school year and ongoing. So having clean recyclables and compostables, we are considering contamination in the landfill bin. So in this picture, we can see clean cardboard, clear liners full of food scraps and paper plates. These should have been placed in the recycle and the compost bins. However, again, watching out for that 10% contamination, that's the only time when it should be going into the landfill. So when you find patterns in what is inside the site's recycle and compost bins that are consistently showing up contamination, we want to record, report, and work to correct those. With the new system of waste management tracking contamination in our waste management recycle and compost bins, there will also be site visits starting this new school year by our waste management reps and our custodial team to be checking and notifying the school site team when properly sorted items are being found in the landfill bin. So it's really important that we want to find ways to improve on the collection of the 3 waste streams. So the site checks will also include the recycle and the compost bins as well. So we will be getting more detailed inspections that the waste management trucks are not able to provide for us. It is important to give your custodial team a heads up on this and for us to work out as a team to find solutions. Next slide, please. So not just plastic bags, but all other types of flimsy plastic like plastic wrap, shrink wrap, and bubble wrap. These are all and always landfill items. Remember, all flimsy plastic like these are always contamination in both the recycle and the compost bin. Next slide. So have you ever wondered why flimsy plastics aren't allowed in the recycle bin? Even if the little chasing arrows are on that plastic. So part of the sorting process at waste management, one of the first things that all that material hits is this machine made of multiple spinning discs. When the bags, liners, and plastic wrap are mixed in with the rest of the recyclables, they come into this disc section of the sorting process, causing havoc during processing. The flimsy plastic gets torn, shredded, and stretched by the spinning discs of the machines wrapping themselves in the gears. Machines have to be shut down multiple times per day to detangle the equipment. Sometimes if enough flimsy plastic gets caught in this spinning machine parts, they break. So we don't want flimsy plastic, even if they have that recycling system, recycling symbol. So those they can't be processed, so they belong in the landfill. Next slide, please. So there are times when there's larger, bulky, rigid plastic items that need to be tossed due to them being broken or damaged in some way. So these types of items, Waste Management has agreed that if we save them at a school site and there's enough building up that they can do a special pickup, or if they're small quantities, then the choice would be to toss them to the landfill bin. So depending upon what you are seeing in the volume, please make the best call on these types of items to either collect them or toss them to the landfill. Next slide, please. So last year we did share out this poster that should be up in all the offices, custodial offices at this point. We'll be sending out another batch for this new school year. So we would just want to review the poster as needed, just on what's required on the waste management end. Next slide, please. So if the material, again, is sorted properly within the school, then it needs to be kept sorted correctly to the end with getting into the correct waste management bin. So for example, the classroom recycle collection, servicing classroom bins, there should be 2 bins used to collect the material to stay separate. With keeping that in mind, when the whole campus is being serviced, if you need like the 2 bins or a 3-bin system to do the collection. Next slide, please. So remembering on the outside bins for waste management and the carts, we do need to have the lids closed and flush with the bin. If a bin is overflowing, like the image of the bin on the left, then we are charged with a $150 fee per bin. And then if it's a cart, that's $75 charge. And this is every time the driver services that bin. So this can add up fast. So we do also want to check that cardboard boxes are being broken down and compact materials as best as possible. If one of the bins are overflowing, materials backing up outside the bin, check that the service was provided accordingly to the waste management schedule and that service was not missed. So if services are being completed and having overages, it may be an issue on your bin being right-sized. So we might want to increase the service, either on the size of the bin or the frequency. So you want to check in with your field supervisor or myself so that we can see what bin servicing works best for your site. Next slide, please. So with having any waste management service issues, with our new contract that we have with Waste Management that started this past July, we will be getting credits. So like they charge us for things, we're charging them for things. So if they do missed pickups, if they drop the bins in the wrong location and we're having to ask them to come back out, if they're leaving the gates unlocked after servicing, if they're leaving debris on the ground after servicing, if they're doing damage to the fences or the walls after servicing, we want these called in immediately so we can give Waste Management a heads up to correct the issue and get service for whatever's needed. And then that also gets tracked into added into our credit log system so that we get credit on those service issues. Okay, next slide, please. The school community infrastructure. So, next slide, please. So as a reminder, our job in custodial is to provide the appropriate infrastructure, right? The blue and the green bins to go with the gray landfill bins and the signage, and then to check the contamination. Next slide, please. So there is a balance of having the infrastructure in place with the bins and signage and the procedures involved. And then simultaneously is to have the students and staff using the bins correctly. And we know that's a balancing act, right? It can go either way. We want to have that even balance. So we are asking our principals to support the balance so the system works effectively. We are working on additional measures of support to improve on this balance. And we have created a slide deck being shared with the principals that also includes this slide, asking for their support on the overall waste management stream for your school site, and asking them to be working with the students and staff so that the bins are being used properly. Next slide, please. So we have had our food donation program for some 10 years now, and a little bit limited on it being district-wide, but with the pandemic hit, that ramped up our food rescue system dramatically. And we have a couple strong food recovery nonprofit organizations that have been doing the pickup. Much appreciation to many of our custodial staff that have been involved in this effort on collecting the surplus and working with our food donation partners on the pickups. We will be continuing this work and finding ways to collect and distribute the surplus food that the students don't eat and that we can't save, to have it being donated to our families or to our community partners. Next slide, please. So with the different components involved in this work, it is good that we have some different resolutions and policies in place, and some that are being worked on. So we have our past environmental climate change literacy policy that went through 2018 by our board being approved, and the working group is overseeing its implementation. So we have embedded 7 Rs happening for our students K through 12. Last year, we passed a climate emergency action resolutions with forming a sustainability action council that is a diverse and expanded group of students, teachers, parents, community members, and partners. Next in the plans for this group is to re-engage our district green team with forming a district task force that's composed of staff that are key to the environmental sustainability work. And then for our work directly, we have a drafted up Green Glove 7 Rs materials management policy that is a comprehensive policy on waste reduction and sorting for our district that we are planning to take to our board in early fall. With then having an implementation and maintenance plan that we will be working on once we get the policy completed, we'll start working onto the plan. Last year, we needed to have a new contract with a hauler. So with our new contract with Waste Management, it's more comprehensive and detailed with having additional support and to reach our diversion and sorting goals. This does include having a waste management recycling coordinator for 20 hours a week, and then also dedicated funding that's going towards supplies and materials. Next slide. So support. Next slide. So it is a team effort of support with providing, as we've talked about so far in this overall training, on the supplies and the bins. So if you need bins, we'll get you bins. We have this on-demand streaming training video, covering all the basics of what goes where, and that we'll be continuing to expand on our training material. We're working out sorting training games to reinforce proper sorting behavior, site assessments and checks, troubleshooting for ongoing contamination challenges. We have our team at Waste Management to ensure consistent service. Coming soon, we're working on having kind of a student lead champions to be working on waste reduction and sorting at their school site. And then very excited about having an AmeriCorps fellow starting in September that we'll have for the school year that will be directly supporting all of this work. And then, as I mentioned, with the environmental climate change literacy, working on embedded curriculum that's dealing with action-oriented waste reduction and sorting curriculum and activities that students would be doing on their campus. And last slide. So you got this, we got this, let's do this as a team. So thank you for reviewing our custodial waste sorting overview. Thank you for all you have already done and for continuing to do your part for your school, the OUSD community, and the world at large. Our actions, little and large, creates a brighter future. All right.
Thanks, Nancy and Amanda. That was awesome. So now you all see how the magic is made at OUSD. We have a lot of questions in the chat that are really, really good. And we're going to kind of go through them, get to as many as we can. Alina has kind of prioritized them for us. So let's see. Where did you put those, Alina?
Yeah, so the first question came from Ben, and it was, do we know which districts are going to be eating outside and when things are going to be expected to move back to the cafeteria? Has that been announced?
I think that is a district by district decision. I don't think that's coming from the state or the public agencies. So I think it's really based on the public health concerns, in each county. So does somebody know what's going on in their county? I think what's going on in Alameda County, Jill and Nancy?
Well, again, it's district by district. In Pleasanton, all of our eating areas are outdoors. And so the only time that changes is if there's really, really inclement weather. So there should be no change in PUSD.
Great.
Yeah, same, eating outside until we feel it's safe to go inside. I've heard like maybe January we might use cafeterias again, but until I hear it, like for sure, we're on it, like, yeah.
Got it. And then the next question came from Kelsey. It was about planning for bin capacity. So elementary students currently have the 3 waste streams, but high school students do not, and they might be more spread out during meals. Any suggestions there?
So the main thing would be finding ways where you can reduce some of those landfill bins so that you still set up the 3 stream, like counting like the total landfill bins and where you have the stations. And then ideally removing a few of the landfills so that you still have roughly the same amount of bins that the custodians would be servicing to be fair on their time, their capacity.
It's definitely an issue, though. We do have some high schools where the students, they just leave everything behind them. Can you believe that? And so that's definitely a cultural shift that we need to address. Just leaving their lunch materials behind anywhere they eat is a really, really bad practice. And that's something that we really need to overcome. And a lot of times we can do that with student green teams and others that are helping to try and change the culture at the school site. But it's a tough one for sure.
In terms of right sizing the bins, what we did in PUSD, we did a full day's lunch waste audit at all 15 school sites so that we could see how much landfill, recycling, and composting material was present. We extrapolated that information because we knew the district wanted to use 32-gallon containers. So we actually created a little spreadsheet that would help them estimate, based on that full day's lunch waste and the material breakdown, what it would take to, we don't want to fill all the bins up to 100%, but if they were going to do 3 bin stations with that amount of material, how many 3 bin stations they would need. And then we worked with the students, the custodians, and the administrative staff to look at the placement of those 3 bin stations. And that was particularly important at the middle and high schools where we have outdoor seating. We know the students eat all over the place. There is kind of a central location, but it's not the only place that students eat. And that's how we did it in Pleasanton Unified. It was icky. We were up to our elbows in, lunch waste, but I just told everybody, hey, 3 hours ago, this was tasty stuff. So it's not that bad. And we did it for all 15 campuses and got that really pretty accurate, and now they've got 3 bin stations at all of the campuses based on that data. And then we keep an eye on, their waste tracking so that we know if we still got it right size, but student bin monitors are a big thing, and we don't have it perfect in Pleasanton Unified, but that's how we dealt with the content and the right sizing of the 3 bin stations, making sure we have that data first with the waste audits.
Amanda, do you want to share out on Monte Vista and Miramontes? Like the combination of those two schools and student leaders, it's pretty awesome.
I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly, but it was very helpful at those 2 schools to have the student green teams involved at the high school level. They know where students eat, and just reminding them we want to remove a lot of landfill bins, and communicating that with the custodial staff. So it's not extra work. We're removing a lot of bins and just making it more streamlined. And a lot of times, yeah, students know the pathways that students take. So they're not going to get up necessarily and throw away their trash while they're eating, but it might be, the bell rings, and as they're running to their class, what space to place those bins. So definitely working with the students that know the campus.
Great. And another question pivoting here to enforcement is from Tammy asking, has CalRecycle sent notices to schools and admins and districts about mandates, or is that the responsibility of the hauler?
So do you want to highlight, we do have the team from CalRecycle. Curry, do you or somebody on your team want to address that?
Yes, so we have been trying to get information out to all the districts. We've been doing presentations and having open conversations, but it is up to jurisdictions also to provide that education and outreach to organic waste generators, including schools.
Great, thanks. And the next question also about enforcement is from Jesse asking what kind of monitoring and enforcement will be required for schools according to SB 1383?
So the regs specifically state in 1383 that you provide periodic inspection. So it was covered in the presentation earlier. You provide periodic inspections to make sure that there is no contamination. If there is contamination, informing your staff and students that there is contamination and the proper way to sort the materials. So exactly what the presentation said. As far as CalRecycle's enforcement, it's also laid out in Article 15. We haven't, we're still ironing all those out, but that's exactly the information we'll be looking for, that you provide that clear labeling, containers where the materials are generated, and in education and outreach to your students and staff. Does that answer that question?
I think so. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
The next question is about best practices. It's from Hilda asking, are there any best practices for kitchen staff about separating packaging from food? So like I'm thinking, a big container of spaghetti sauce that's dirty on the inside. Any best practices for things like that, large containers?
So we will be, we've got a few slide decks and trainings that we've been doing with Nutrition Services Department. So we'll be adding those onto our NCRA website spreadsheet, all the trainings, including the 101 video, because somebody is asking about that in the chat as well. And then also the Kahoot games. We're just going to do like screenshots of all the questions and providing the script, so that folks can then like tap into that material that's in the Kahoot game.
Perfect. I love Kahoot. And this question just came in, where is the training website? If the team can post that in the chat, that would be great. And then I'll get to the next question, which came from Tammy as well. And it was regarding designating adult monitors to encourage proper sorting. Without designated adult monitors, the program might not be as successful. So any thoughts or considerations there? like garbage monitors? Any recommendations or best practices around garbage monitors in schools?
Well, ideally, you train the students, right? A lot of schools start out with, a green team teacher, parent, who volunteers their time, or sometimes it's a major duty, like other things that they are required to do. And they might, you train, hopefully the students, and then the students will then help to decontaminate stuff. Sometimes the custodian has green team kids and tells them what to do. And a lot of kids are really into making corrections and doing that kind of thing, especially when they have those grabbing tools and aprons and stuff. A lot of kids are motivated by that. So, just different ways to motivate the kids to do it, really. And then eventually, we have schools that have been doing this for so long, so well, that they eventually don't even need the student monitors because every kid in the school is trained. I mean, eventually you'll get there. But yeah, the adults, yeah. And then some schools, the principal likes to be in there during lunchtime and will go around and make sure everything's going well with the kids and with the green team. So
a perfect follow-up from Helena, who asks, what type of jobs do you suggest student volunteers at high schools and green teams do, especially newer green teams? What actions should they start with?
So a lot of good green team jobs are like for the little kids, to have older kids come around with these little landfill buckets and kind of collect the landfill from the tables. That's what we used to do. Of course, now there's, going to be issues with that. But so we used to get the landfill out of the way for them so they had fewer things to sort when they lined up with their tray. And another good, of course, monitoring bins. We always tell them, okay, prioritize the compost bin and then the recycling bin, and you don't have to monitor too closely the landfill as much, but these are the priorities. Also, stacking trays is another good job, because we a lot of times have these cardboard trays, and kids are going through fast and they won't stack their trays, but we encourage the tray stacking, but a lot of times we do need a kid to monitor that, to take up less room in the compost bin for those trays. And let's see, helping kids pour out their milk is another good thing. Having a kid there to, be by the milk bucket to help kids to pour out their heavy milk that they need to do before they recycle their carton. Yeah.
On the high school side, what we've seen is that the green teams are really good about creating PSAs. I once asked kids how they get information at school, and it was shocking to me that it's not social media and it's not online. They still get their information about school dances, club meetings by hanging up posters in the hallways and through the PSAs, the public service announcements. Oftentimes those are videos, oftentimes those are produced by a tech class. We've got some excellent ones in the can that students have produced over the years, and that can be a really effective way of communicating all the time. I think the biggest challenge that we have at high schools is that if you have the green team geeks, they might not be as persuasive with the rest of the student body as we need them to be. And so there's some concern about that pigeonholing. So, we need oftentimes the leadership class. It's already a leadership class. We'd like the leadership class to take responsibility for having an environmental commissioner, and that's an important sounding job. Jill, did you want to talk about the leaders for the 21st century? I think that would be a good example.
Thanks, Ruth. So we have a club construct, I guess you would say, for high school students. It's a particular type of club called Local Leaders of the 21st Century, where students learn about their local wastewater, energy, and food systems, and they work with public policymakers to include the leadership of their schools on sustainable policies to improve those four systems in their community. When it comes to waste, our Local Leaders of the 21st Century clubs work side by side with the district green team, with their school site green team, to do everything from training to bin monitor training and being bin monitors. They've even done some surveying around the campus eating area, and they found that people felt very awkward, you know, that horror that you feel as a teenager, feeling awkward when they went up to the bins and they had to look at the signs and they got confused because they needed to do it fast so they didn't look like a dork. And so they're looking at, and they did this in the past, and we will have to redo them because they don't last, but putting QR codes on the tables so that kids could scan those with their phone and see before they go up to the bins what is recyclable and compostable, using photographs of things that are actually in that high school's waste stream. And so the local leaders, the 21st Century Club, have done some things around that as well. And then every once in a while, they do some incentive, you know, things. They will set up a table out in the eating area with information and, you know, something fun, something loud, you know, around certain times of the year that are particularly green. But they have really been impactful on the campuses where we've got them.
Perfect. And great to see some of the comments coming in here and suggestions. I also wanted to go back to a question that was about contamination. It was regarding how to identify contamination of landfill containers if they're in black bags. And maybe this opens up a bigger question about how to track contamination.
Yeah, so that's where it's ideal to try and figure out a way to go all clear liners, because in that way, when you're looking in the landfill bin, you can tell what's in there. So our issue right now is trying to find a liner that's comparable in price to the black liner, which is our current challenge. But it definitely does spot out like issues when like the compostables being put in the landfill, because that's going to be a clear liner.